Ready?
Yeah.
Pop the collar.
Am I
Ready?
popping the collar?
No. Well.
Is it? I don't have.
Is it pop? Is it collar popping? No, you're tied down. It's my preppy background.
Yeah.
You ready? Let's pop these collars.
I can't believe this is documented. This is one of the. Yeah. I'll hear about this. I'll hear about this. Go for it.
I don't.
You never have a
You're lucky.
cocktail.
Oh, yeah. You're lucky.
All right. Hey, Internet, I'm Chaz.
And I'm Dan. Welcome to Wine is Serious Business, episode 152, 252.
252.
We're back. We're back with another awesome interview. Some great guests. This has been in the works probably for over a year. Really happy we finally made this happen. Thanks to Tom and Kate for having us down. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves and what drew you to having an urban winery as opposed to something out in wine country somewhere?
Ladies first.
Okay. Tom and I are Division winemaking company. We started making wine in France in 2009 and moved specifically to Oregon to start our wine brand. We made wine in the valley for a full vintage before deciding, or 2 vintages actually, before deciding to start an urban winery. And that's because we love it in the city. We love the city of Portland. It's where we live.
Me too.
It's a great town.
It's awesome.
That's why we all moved here, right?
Yeah.
And unless anyone an original Portlander
Nope.
here? No, exactly. We all moved here.
Yeah.
And decided that this was the spot for us. We live 6 blocks from here. Our winery is right on Division and 35th Place. Division.
Yeah.
And named our winery after what we do and where we live. The Southeast Wine Collective is also our winery here too. So, yeah.
Kate nailed it, and it was. I mean, living here and after doing a commute down to the Willamette Valley, hour and a half each way, especially during harvest. It was definitely.
Did you ever sleep in the winery?
Oh yeah, and in our car.
Tom's caught me sleeping. I have a really good 2-barrel move.
Napa Pro.
Yeah,
Oh, really? You got to figure it out.
It's a really good one.
If you don't do it right, though, you're going to need to go to the chiropractor.
Yeah, I'm pretty good size for it also. So we also thought that it would be tough for our clients to expect them to come visit us every weekend down in the valley too. And wanted them to find an easy way to be able to enjoy wine, not only our wine, but the wine that our peers are making. There's beautiful wine being made here in Portland.
It was also, that's exactly right. And just, even beyond that, we have all of these friends who are kind of young and have families or got jobs and whatever. It's, and we would ask them, hey, do you ever go down to the valley and do wine tasting? And they're like, well, we've been once.
Yeah.
Or we used to.
Or
we used to, yeah.
And we were like, well, if we're going to build this career ourselves and expect the people that we know around us to kind of grow with us, it's going to be a lot harder to tell them, hey, leave the neighborhood we all hang out in and come see us. It's just 50 miles away. And it just kind of made sense. We're like, hey, we can build this and build hopefully the people who enjoy our wines are around where we live.
Yeah, community.
Nice. Do we give a shout out to someone who has nothing to do with the wine business that's able to enjoy your wine?
Nothing to
in
do with
the
the wine
location?
business.
Ooh, who enjoys our
Say
wine?
hi to a friend, yeah.
A person. You can do it.
I would like to say hi to my friend Mary O'Neill.
Yeah.
Fantastic. It's fun stuff, right? Maybe she'll see it, maybe she'll never
She's
see
my
it.
friend too.
She's been my partner in crime and now Kate's partner in crime too.
Shared
Since I
best
was
friends.
17 years old.
Awesome.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
since when I started college, and
then
she loves wine too, but she is not in the industry.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, well, let's start out with wine number 1. Start here probably, right? That makes sense?
Yeah.
Great.
White
And
wine.
Go
Let's
ahead
do
and introduce the wine to us,
It's our 2010 Chardonnay.
which is pretty great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're really excited about it.
So I thought it'd be kind of fun to check in on our first white wine that we made for Division Winemaking Company. And, the first year we didn't make a lot of wine, we made a total of 325 cases. And I think Chardonnay-wise, we had 2 barrels, so it was 55 cases, plus, 2 barrels plus a keg or something like that.
Chardonnay was the only white wine we made when we were working in France. And it is, I remember specifically, it was actually the first fruit we ever brought in when we were staging, when we were interning in France. And the winemaker I worked for, what Tom and I worked for, we brought the fruit in, and right as we were loading into the press, he's like, never forget the smell of Chardonnay when it's perfectly ripe and when it's right in
Cool.
balance. And he's like, you should never forget this moment. So it's something we always strive for.
It's very true.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Do you remember though that 50 pounds of Viognier we made for his dad?
Oh, that's right, in the tiny little basket press. Yes, that's.
But yes,
I don't remember that. No, not one bit.
So do you have to do a lot of work when you get Chardonnay now? You're like out in the vineyard smelling it, or like when fruit's coming in?
So
you're like, oh.
Chardonnay is really, I think, and I know Kate, and I spend an exorbitant amount of time
Thinking about
it, almost more that you have, in my opinion, less room for error
No
for when
leeway.
you pick it or how you handle it than you do with Pinot Noir or red varietals that are just typically a little bit more forgiving each vintage. And so this was this vineyard that we got the Chardonnay from is it's in the Willamette Hills, and it's called the Eola Springs Vineyard, and it's planted on this marine sedimentary spot. And this Chardonnay was planted in
Early 70s.
Yeah, 1974, 1975.
Okay.
And at that time, when the vineyard was first planted, they had no idea what would work there. They planted Chard, they planted Zinfandel, they planted Cab, and they planted Pinot Noir. Well, the only two things left from back then are the Pinot Noir and the Chardonnay.
These vines beat to their own drum. They were the last thing to ripen of every single vintage. But they also, of the vines that we worked with in our first couple of vintages, I think show the most unique terroir of Oregon. They've been there the longest, and they really have tapped into that marine layer. There's like a salinity to it, which is really cool, and almost like bordering on chalkiness, which is unheard of, I think, in Oregon, but also sort of comes from fossils and the things that you find down there, which is really cool.
Maybe some of the vine age bring that out that other vineyards really don't have the opportunity to do.
Chardonnay grape in general is such a leech to everything it does. The reason people kind of sometimes don't like it because it easily absorbs a lot of oak. It easily
and it amplifies it.
And it kind of throws it back out at you. But the one thing that is amazing for Chardonnay is that it's a perfect terroir grape because it does suck up all the different mineral content. So you really do get different expressions that are clearly delineated from site to site.
So this is a 1T108 clone, and so late ripening, originally a California clone. And due to the age of the vines and sort of the slow ripening, you're able to maintain that acidity in the wine too, which I think
still got a lot left.
A lot left, yeah.
And very, very good.
Thank you. It's and that's I think is one of the most important things about Chardonnay is you can hit it with oak as much as you want, but as long as you're keeping acid with it, it's always going to be okay. So.
Yeah, you guys did a really good job of not over oaking this one. The oak is really nicely balanced, the fruit.
Well, and then surprisingly, one of the barrels in this is a new barrel.
So it's 50% new oak.
It's crazy.
Is that nuts?
Yeah,
that doesn't smell or taste like it.
No,
really
not at all.
You should tell them about the kind of barrel we use because why this works so well.
So when we were working in France, we got to spend some time at some cooperages, which I recommend to anybody. I mean, anyone that's interested in wine, go to visit a cooperage. It's freaking incredible. It's intense. It's really interesting. It'll allow you to understand a lot about how it is that your wines become the wines that they are. And so there's a couple of different cooperages that use this method, but we purchase this barrel specifically for our Chardonnay from Séguin-Moreau, and so in their Burgundy production plant, and it's called in Meursault, that's right, and it's called a water bend barrel or an aquaflex. So it's the staves are aged and then cut. And then before they are toasted, they're actually dipped in hot boiling water.
And soaked for a while.
So that when the toast is applied, it doesn't burn or blister. It just sears, and it's a deep sear. So it's not an overly sort of caramelized burnt wood flavor that you get from
Yeah,
it.
smoky, oaky.
More just sort of structural, and it also allows that oak to integrate a little bit faster with the Chardonnay, which for a New World Chardonnay is a little bit more important. I mean, we tend to drink our Chardonnays younger here.
Sure, especially your first couple vintages, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
right away. I think in France they have the luxury of just laying them away and seeing them later. We don't have that luxury here. And
But it's still fun to go back to 2010 and see that.
it's only 4.
Yeah, this is drinking just killer.
It really is. I think the nose is pretty subtle. You get like some nice earthy notes, a little bit of apple there. But when you taste it, the flavors really come forward. And I think really nice tart green apple, that oak that you were talking about is really well integrated at this point. Just a really nice touch of richness. A little bit of toasty flavor, I think, but just that good complexity that I think Chardonnay can really bring out. Yeah.
I think what that toast allows us to have is to sort of augment the like the fresh butter, like the cold butter aspect you can get in Chardonnay versus like a hot popcorny butter, which I think I don't enjoy in Chardonnay
Yeah, it's
personally.
done. Really overdone.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the thing with the oak too is, you know, especially on a new barrel and for Chardonnay, you know, it's when people think of what you're getting out of the oak barrel, you know, it's not just the flavor of oak or the kind of vanilla aspect that comes out of it, but you know, there's dozens, if not hundreds, of compounds that all come out from the toasting process that are part of the whole structuring. You know, you get octannin, there's just an amazing amount of dense compounds that end up affecting the wine and the way it's structured. So we want to have the new barrel in there for that purpose, but kind of moderate or not let the dominant trait of that be, you know, just oak flavor.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, which I think is something, you're right, something you do if you've got
Bingo! Is it baked?
There we go.
First bleep of the show.
Yeah, I feel like that heavy oak is something that's like used to cover up if you're not getting good fruit, right? Or it's like stuff goes wrong.
And a
or
different
whatever.
style. And I think, you know, Chardonnay is the most planted, most consumed white grape on the face of the planet. And people love it. I mean, there's plenty of people that love that huge, rich style of Chardonnay.
Absolutely.
But at the
My
same
mom is
time,
one of them,
if
so.
Tom's stepmom, I mean, she loves
Give her
she
a romper,
loves that.
romper time.
You know what? I won't not drink it. But as long as people are drinking Chardonnay, I think it's fun. It it can be the gateway into this style also. You know,
Absolutely.
so I think that's important. It's doesn't matter as long as they're drinking wine, it's totally fine.
Sure.
True.
That's good. Well, thanks for sharing this. This is really nice.
Yeah. Really, really nice.
You were done with yours. We got to
I'm
hurry
sorry.
I
up.
know, we do your rinse, I know. We're talking too much, I guess.
Drink away.
All right.
I love that this is on a reducer.
Yeah, it was really, really smart. Tom had a good job.
Yeah.
We were like trying to
Sorry.
prop it up on a pocket knife, trying to do some different things with it, but I think that's...
He said tripod, and I was like,
just a little rinse.
I was like, I know what looks like a tripod in here.
Yeah, perfectly sized.
It smells delicious.
All right. So what are we drinking now?
So we have here our 2013 Meteored Carbonic Pinot Noir,
Poor you, man.
and this is part of our Division Village wines. And
We should talk about Village for a second.
you should explain
Yeah.
Village and I'll talk about the wine.
Also, I mean, not to keep going back to France. I mean, this sounds
No,
repetitive.
go back to France.
That's cool. Yeah. Tell us about it. Cool
My
story.
my family's from there, and it's it's an important part of our story. You know, that's where we learned how to make wine. Tom and I were really
She's now a Loiregan. She's from the Loire and now resides in Oregon.
A little wire
oh,
again.
that's
Works,
sweet.
yeah.
That's sweet.
That's really good.
Yeah.
The Loiregonian.
I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't know what you're talking about. When we were living there, there was this whole level of village wines. Wines that are quaffable, wines that were well priced, wines that were interesting but not too complicated.
The wines that what people drink most days of the week.
Yeah.
Right.
And we came back to the States and we're thinking about those wines and thinking about the fact that nobody was making those wines with intention. So they were either making their first label or their second label, and the second
Which is like
label
the stuff left over.
was the stuff that they didn't necessarily. I mean, no one really talks about this, but it's sort of like maybe not the
It
stuff.
took me a while to figure
It
that
wasn't.
out.
It wasn't
Oh,
their
yeah.
premier
Yeah,
stuff.
absolutely.
And I was like, well, instead of making wine that's somewhat rejected that way, why not make wine intentionally at that price point? So using winemaking methods and techniques and fruit that allow you to keep that price point down,
Right.
but also that it be interesting and not just sort of wine that fell off the back of the truck.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Division Village was born.
Division Village was born, yeah. And one of the techniques that we found most interesting when we were studying and learning and working in the Beaujolais was carbonic fermentation, or Meteored Carbonic Maceration. And so the idea here is...
That cute little amount of French was hilarious.
But the concept here is that you're taking the grapes whole cluster, and instead of extracting the tannin and the flavor and the color of the skins via pulverization of like a punch down tool or constant pump over technique,
Right.
Or even just destemming, you know? So
or even breaking the juice open. You're letting carbonic or carbon dioxide essentially enzymatically breaking down the skin.
Each berry becomes its own mini fermenter. It's pretty cool. It's a really
Heard
fun
about
process.
And so it's what was, it really kind of came out of the post World War II world, where they had in France, especially in the Beaujolais, they had no oak, no stainless steel, none of these things, and they were just kind of dumping these big bins of grapes into these kind of homemade cement open top things, and the juice would break open the bottom and it would start fermenting and it would create this carbon dioxide above, and so then they would have these really fresh zesty wines that they would start passing around to everybody, and this became Nouveau. And so flash forward.
I didn't know, really, that's like a World War II era?
Like after World War II.
Wow.
You got all these guys
I didn't know it was a recent thing.
States,
And they want to drink.
and they kick
Sure.
the Germans out, and they're ready to get after
Sure.
it.
And they want to drink the wine right now. Yeah. Okay.
They're
So
thirsty.
This was a very, and it wasn't really designed at the time to be this kind of big marketing thing that it turned into in the 70s
Sure.
with
And that's
George DeBoeuf.
that's been problematic and also positive. for them,
Exactly.
but yes.
Yeah, there's pluses and minuses to both parts of the equation.
But the style of fermentation really allows us to, one, create a Pinot Noir that doesn't see any oak, so we're able to reduce that cost proportion. Like these cellars are not cheap.
Totally.
And then also the fermentation style is a little bit of a faster breakdown, which allows us then to bring this wine to market a little bit quicker. So this is a spring release for us. So this is, we released this on April 1st last year.
Wow.
So if you think about the turnaround in terms of pricing, since we're not holding on to it and aging it for a year, it can be cheaper. It can be less expensive. More affordable. My mom would be mad that I use the word cheap.
but your mom lives in France?
No, she actually lives in California now, but she's the Frenchie, yes.
Okay. But I think that's great, because I think the price you pay stylistically for turning things around and releasing them quickly, it's just that things are like younger and fresher and brighter. And I think part of the trend away from that was even to get rid of like some of that acidity and crispness, which due to other wine press over the past couple decades really kind of fell out of favor. It's coming back in now. I like it pretty much all the time. So these young, fresh Pinot Noirs,
I think
right in my alley.
I think that Oregon is really well known for making serious Pinot Noir. Like
Yeah.
we do it really well here, but why not make young, fun Pinot too?
Quaffable.
Yeah.
So
And I think it's good here because the fruit's good here, and fruit can be good young.
And that's the thing, though. You can't sacrifice the grapes. You can't say, "Oh, we're going to go, just cheap it out." I mean, literally, what Kate was saying is we've just reduced the time horizon. We also aged this wine for the short period in a cement tank.
We also picked
awesome.
specific vines for it too, that were perhaps not as old and as mature in terms of their time on earth.
And they yielded a little bit. Naturally, the site right there had a
Needed
little bit more
higher
vigor
yield,
and
yeah.
yield. So it was like, hey, we can lease this spot and we can get a little bit higher yield. And these are vines that have not proven themselves over 30 years. They don't have like price cachet on them.
Yeah.
But we know the site's right, and we know people farm it right, and they know they're doing the right things.
And it's also supporting younger vineyards in a sort of substantial way, with intention. Like we want to be able to support not only the older vineyards that we work with, but the younger ones that are coming on board too.
Yeah, well, if you want to buy fruit in 10 years, you got to get on it now, right?
Exactly.
Like,
It's true.
That's
It's
going to be
very
hard to
true.
find. So yeah.
So essentially this wine is then carbonic fermentation. It's pressed off, and then we put it back into the same cement tank we fermented it in, and we age it there. And it's really, really kind of fruity at that point in time.
Yeah.
And the kind of cool thing about this cement is it's got this it's made of lime, and so it's got this kind of mineral component which interfaces with the acidity of the wine, and so that helps soften and bring just enough complexity into the wine so that it's not just a simple only fruit kind of wine.
Right.
And then it being light and somewhat acid driven, and it comes out in the spring. For us, it's a perfect summertime Pinot Noir. It's not like a big oaky rich wine. It's something we can say to our customers, hey, this is the kind of red wines that are best in the warmer months.
And it's also something that I want to grab and take it over to a friend's house on Wednesday. Sometimes I want to take something over on a Wednesday. It doesn't need to be the most expensive bottle or the fanciest bottle, and just something that's enjoyable.
So retail price on this?
So depending on the retailer,
Of course, yeah.
Here we sell it for $19.
There you go.
And
Nice.
when we did have it.
Good at that price.
Right.
Yeah.
And we talk about this all the time, right? If you can get enjoyable Oregon Pinot Noir for sub 20, that's a
a big
score.
deal.
Yeah.
It is. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And sometimes I want to play sub 20. That's what that's.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
most days of the week.
$20.
Yeah, exactly. True.
But sometimes you don't want
Touche.
wine to say too much. You just
Yeah.
want
You want it to be drinkably, and you want it to be drinkable, delicious. Well, wine's always drinkable, so I shouldn't say that. But
absolutely. But sometimes
it just needs to be approachable, and I didn't say good.
Favorable moments where I should read.
Well, it's good. No, that's quotable. That's documented now. We can play that back.
I didn't say good. I said drinkable.
But the fruit here is really nice and bright. I mean, cherries are sort of like a raspberry thing going on there too. And there's like a
100%.
little bit of like the red tea going on in the finish.
Rooibos.
Yeah, it's really good.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Zest,
solid,
zesty,
just solid, just straightforward. Yeah, really nice.
pure Pinot. It just tastes like pure Pinot Noir. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, whoosh, that's it.
I think carbonic fermentation sometimes gives this. I mean, it tends to create a red fruit driven wine if you do it the way we do it, where we kind of a lower temperature fermentation.
Okay.
But it always kind of reminds me a little bit of like frozen cherries, raspberries, strawberries.
cool.
Almost like the characteristic if you buy those and then turn them into a smoothie or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's been one of the things I've noticed.
No, I love it, and I use like the ice descriptor with other wines pretty regularly, but I can totally see where you're coming from with this. That's
Cold
cool.
boiling.
And I get like a dark. There's a little bit of a dark character here too. Again, not like the dark.
The
oak
very
wine.
end of mouth. Do you know what
Yeah.
I'm talking about? Like it's like warm in a way. Yeah.
like a little bit of asphalt or something like that, but just light.
Maybe
light,
that's
yeah.
the concrete.
Could be, yeah.
Exactly. We're gonna be landing at 747
Power
on it.
suggestion.
then.